So, remember about 3 months ago when Ivan Demidov joined the Montreal Canadiens and it was one of the biggest stories in hockey? Well, 3 months ago on April 8th, 2025, we had this episode of the Sean Starr Show featuring Sean Starr and Marco D'Amico, which went out there and discussed the Ivan Demidov departure from SKA St. Petersburg and his inevitable arrival in Montreal. Why are we bringing up YouTube videos from 3 months ago? Well, because in this segment, Marco D'Amico had a very intriguing comment that I wanted to revisit in today's video commentary. It talks about Ivan Demidov, it talks about the Habs, and it goes over why some of the other teams in the 2024 NHL Entry Draft might have passed on the inevitable point-per-game Habs superstar. Yeah, I say point per game. He has 2 points in 2 games. Great. But he was the 5th overall pick, taken behind Macklin Celebrini, Artem Levshunov, Beckett Seneca, and Caden Lindstrom. Macklin Celebrini going number 1, pretty reasonable, pretty expected. I think a lot of folks were waging their bets that he would be the 1st overall pick. But then you dive into some of the other names. Levshunov going 2, maybe he wasn't seen by the majority of people as a bona fide 2nd overall talent, but over to Chicago, it was like, okay, that team is probably going to take him 2nd overall. I mean, some analysts had Levshunov at 10th overall. But if you go down, Seneca going 3rd was kind of a surprise, Lindstrom going 4th was somewhat expected, and then Demidov going 5th to Montreal was the icing on the cake. To help us out with what it is Marco D'Amico talks about on this video podcast, I'll leave another link in the description to this article published on HabsFanatics.com yesterday, July 26. The real reason the Blackhawks passed on Demidov is revealed. Yeah, clickbaity title, I know. And I'm the master of clickbait here on YouTube. But there is some very good food for thought here that is written about, because this article goes out there and transcribes the same podcast episode of the Sean Starr Show with Marco D'Amico. Take a look at this. Several hockey experts were surprised when the Canadiens selected Demidov 5th overall in 2024. Not because he was picked by the Habs, but because he slipped all the way to 5th, to most people's surprise. The fact that he's Russian likely played a role, and some teams were hesitant to select Demidov, but certainly not the Canadiens. Anyways, we've just learned something big. Nick Bobrov, one of the Canadian scouts, had been keeping an eye on Demidov for quite some time, and D'Amico shared an interesting behind-the-scenes detail from 2024's draft. Turns out, everyone knew Ivan Demidov wanted to be drafted by the Canadiens. And this article goes out there and says, because of that, it's likely why he ended up slipping. One of the reasons people closely or loosely connected to the hockey world believed this was due to the presence of Nick Bobrov in Montreal. Bobrov gives the Canadiens a huge edge when it comes to Russian prospects because he has a Russian passport and can enter and exit the country freely. Bobrov's connections to the KHL also paid off during the most previous draft, as Kent Hughes selected Alexander Zhuravsky with the 34th overall pick. Some experts had that guy ranked even higher, and it's fair to say Bobrov's presence with the Canadiens paid off once again. And that doesn't even take into account the idea that we've already talked about multiple times on this YouTube channel, that Alexander Zhuravsky, fellow Montreal Canadiens prospect, was childhood friends with Ivan Demidov. There is a connection there. Not saying necessarily that Ivan Demidov is going to be the Zetterberg to Zhuravsky's Datsuk or whatever conversation you wanted to go out there and put together. They're not going to be like the same level of prospect. But there is a connection. There is some camaraderie there. And there is some familiarity, and that helps if you're a franchise like Montreal that's trying to assimilate these players into your organization. Not to mention the idea, that we haven't made a video about yet, but that has been floating around in Canadian circles, that Alexander Zhuravsky might actually be available to the Canadiens sooner than you would expect. But for Ivan Demidov, this might be the poster boy of that very same pattern. Because his first full season in the KHL, wherein he put up 49 points in 65 games played, was nothing short of spectacular. He ended up breaking the junior point record. He had all of this production. He was so good. He was a point per game in the playoffs, just under. And he did all of that with extraordinarily limited ice time. We know that the KHL and their teams like to do this. Hey, you're going to go over to North America? You're a hot young NHL prospect? Well, screw that. Even if you're one of the most talented players on our team, we're not going to play you here in the KHL. We're not going to serve as a developmental league for the National Hockey League. Nah, we're going to punish you because you're going to be leaving us soon. Even though it helps everybody if Demidov plays more. It helps SKA win more. It helps Demidov get more points. It helps Montreal because there's better development. Even if that's the case, we know that SKA and KHL teams generally tend to exhibit that sort of hesitance to give top-tier prospects the respect they deserve. And so for Ivan Demidov, after he wrapped up his season, the fact that he was even allowed to go to Montreal, that was ridiculous. That was totally out of left field. Nobody expected that to happen. You can probably thank Bob Brough for that, who did make his way over and who was in cahoots with everybody involved in the Montreal side, who definitely did serve a meaningful part in the connection between Montreal and St. Petersburg in facilitating this sort of a transaction. And now knowing that Ivan Demidov wanted to be drafted by the Habs, this does make a lot of sense if these other NHL teams at the top of the 2024 NHL Entry Draft were saying, yeah, okay, Demidov might be a second overall caliber guy, but if he doesn't want to come here, if he wants to go to Montreal, why would we draft him? Why would we take the guy that doesn't have his heart where we can be? For Chicago, I mean, the idea of Demidov and Bedard together would be just mind-blowingly bonkers bananas good. Anaheim. Okay, yeah, no, with Anaheim, I understand it. Beckett Seneca's a big dude. He plays a specific style that everybody in Anaheim seems to be able to play. Cutter Gauthier, Leo Carlson, Mason McTavish. Seneca fits that role. I don't necessarily know if Demidov does. I mean, Columbus, it's interesting to see them pass up on Demidov, considering the Russian connection they have with Voronkov, Chinakov, and Marchenko. And Provorov. Having Demidov would be a really nice addition there, too. But I get that they wanted to go with the big guy from Medicine Hat. New NCAA talent, by the way, in Caden Lindstrom. So for Ivan Demidov, he got his wish. He wanted to come to Montreal. That's exactly what happened. And I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this assessment that Demidov did want to come to the Habs and how it actually happened? Thoughts in the comment section below. Both the article and the video clip will be linked in the description below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.